The summer sun pours over the island of Kos, like molten gold spilling across the waves. On Marmari Beach, 27-year-old Anastasia, Patricia Rubinska, golden hair, radiant smile, tilted her head slightly as a friend's phone camera caught her pose. Her pink floral dress swayed in the sea breeze, sunglasses resting neatly atop her head, eyes fixed on a future that seemed wide open, where dreams and summer days felt endless. But only a few hours later, that image became her final memory. Amid the pounding music of a lively cafe, she sent her boyfriend a short, clipped text. "I don't feel comfortable here." The words felt hurried, as if typed in the dark. Then, silence. Her next message read, "I'm fine. Now I'm on my way." Two sentences only minutes apart, yet they carved a small fracture, one that would later swallow every sense of safety. As night fell, the cobblestone streets of Kos stayed alive with tourists' footsteps. But somewhere in the shadows, away from the glow of street lamps and the hum of music, a figure on a motorbike carried Anastasia away from the light. She would never return. And in the void she left behind, a mystery began to take shape, cold, silent, and ready to lead us down a trail of fragments, each one bringing us closer to the truth of what really happened on that summer night. June 12th, 2023 began like any other summer day. On the island of Kos, golden sunlight, soft breezes, and the steady rhythm of tourists' footsteps echoing through narrow streets. Anastasia and her boyfriend Mi had recently settled into their seasonal jobs at a 5-star hotel in the seaside town of Marmari. Today she had the day off, a rare pause in the relentless pace of peak tourist season. For weeks, the couple's life had followed a simple plan: work hard, save money, enjoy the summer. They had been together for over 10 years, bound by shared adventures and dreams that stretched far beyond the horizon. That afternoon, Anastasia decided to join a small gathering of seasonal workers, a familiar ritual on the island. It was the kind of get-together where hotel staff, bartenders, and chefs swapped stories over music and drinks, sharing both the exhaustion and exhilaration of the summer rush. She wore her pink floral dress, blue-tinted sunglasses resting on her head, and carried her silver backpack, details later confirmed by cafe's surveillance footage. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Anastasia chatted with friends, lifted her glass with a smile. But as the evening wore on, the alcohol took its toll. Around 10:30 p.m., she called me. Her voice held both the looseness of drink and a thin layer of unease. "I've had a bit too much. Someone's giving me a ride on a motorbike to meet you." Moments later, she sent a text. "I don't feel comfortable here." Short, direct, like a knock on the door in the middle of the night. Mai replied quickly, telling her to wait. But within minutes, another message arrived saying, "I'm fine. Now I'm on my way." The contradiction between those two messages stopped him cold. He wanted to believe the second one, but years together had honed an instinct, and that instinct whispered something was wrong. He left the hotel immediately, heading for the spot she had shared via phone location. It was a quiet corner in Marmari, darker than he expected. No Anastasia, no familiar face in the night. He called her over and over, no answer. Using a location tracking app, he saw her phone had moved now, pinging from Tigaki, over 5.5 kilometers away. He rushed there. The area was still and sparsely populated, lit only by dim street lamps and the distant sound of waves. No trace of her, no voice answering when he called her name. It was close to midnight now. Mai stood alone in the street, phone in hand, trying to push away the worst-case scenarios. But his instincts, the same instincts that had carried them through a decade together, told him something was deeply, dangerously wrong. By the early hours of June 13th, he couldn't wait any longer. He went to the police, giving them every detail: the call, the texts, the motorbike ride, the changing phone location, and the sudden silence. To the officers, this wasn't the typical tourist gone missing case. Anastasia was known for her punctuality, and she had never once skipped a shift without notice. A search began immediately. Officers, volunteers, even a drone sweeping the island's terrain. But as the hours ticked by, one truth became clear. Time itself was becoming their enemy. And in those first hours when hope and danger existed side by side, the clock was already counting down. As soon as the search began, police focused on combing through security cameras in the Marmari area, the last place Anastasia was seen. Footage from a mini-market provided the first critical piece of the puzzle. On the night of June 12th, she left a cafe with an unfamiliar man walking toward a motorbike. He was identified as 32-year-old Saluddin S., a Bangladeshi national working seasonal agricultural jobs on the island. Saluddin lived in a small house on the outskirts of Marmari with a Pakistani roommate. Neighbors described him as quiet, but not unfriendly, someone who occasionally appeared at local cafes. No one imagined that within days, his name would be linked to one of the island's most disturbing crimes. Police brought him in for questioning. At first he claimed they had simply talked before he saw her off. Later, his story shifted. He said she came to his home to buy hashish, stayed briefly, and left unharmed. The quick change in narrative set off alarm bells for the seasoned investigators. A search warrant was executed that same day. Inside the modest house, officers found items that should not have been there. Strands of blonde hair matching Anastasia's, a yellow sweater with suspicious stains, and a plane ticket to Italy for June 13th, just one day after she disappeared. There were also scratches on his hands and face, which he explained away as injuries from working with thorny plants on the farm. But forensic specialists noticed plant material on his clothing species that grew only in the Tigaki wetlands. His phone told an even darker story. In his browser history for the night of June 12th were chilling searches: how to confuse the police and how to remove fingerprints from a body. Those weren't the words of an innocent man. Witnesses at the party remembered seeing Anastasia talking to a man near the cafe entrance around 8:30 p.m., though they couldn't confirm it was Saluddin. Another security camera located near his home captured Anastasia riding on the back of his motorbike, leaving at around 10:30 p.m. Disturbingly, at 1 a.m., he returned alone, went inside, then emerged carrying large trash bags before leaving again, movements that strongly suggested disposal of evidence. Piece by piece, the picture was starting to take shape. A man, a motorbike, a journey away from the bright, crowded streets into the island's shadows. But at this point, no one knew where Anastasia was, or if she was still alive. For the investigators, the clock was no longer just ticking, it was pounding. And if the theory of evidence disposal was correct, every passing hour meant vital proof could vanish forever. The Aleik's wetlands in Tigaki were a world apart from Koh Sissik's bustling tourist beaches. It was a wild expanse where the salty tang of the sea mixed with the damp scent of reed beds towering overhead. Narrow dirt paths wound through marshy ground that stayed in shadow even under the midday sun. This was where Anastasia's phone had last pinged before it went silent for good. On June 17th, the search took a decisive turn. A volunteer discovered her phone lying abandoned on a remote dirt road near an uninhabited building. The SIM card had been removed, a classic sign of someone deliberately cutting off tracking and communication. Police and search teams shifted their full focus to the wetlands. Drones skimmed over the terrain, scanning for any sign of disturbed ground or abandoned objects. Divers worked through shallow water channels. Anastasia's family, her mother and brother Adrian, joined the effort, slogging through mud with expressions caught between desperate hope and clouded dread. On the morning of June 18th, a group of volunteers spotted something unusual beneath the low branches of a tree about 1 kilometer from Saludin's house and just 500 meters from where the phone had been found. It was a large concealed bundle covered with branches and dry leaves. As the layers of camouflage were pulled back, a plastic bag emerged wrapped in a bedsheet, and inside, Anastasia's body. The scene fell into heavy silence, broken only by the hiss of wind through the reeds. Even seasoned investigators, hardened by years of confronting violent crime, stood still for a long moment. The autopsy would confirm what they already feared. Cause of death: strangulation, the pressure applied with force, and for a sustained period. Her arms and torso bore bruises and abrasions, clear evidence she had fought back fiercely. There were also signs of sexual assault. Adrian later said quietly, "I feared this, but I still hoped I was wrong." The family's grief was no longer just about loss, but about imagining the terror and pain Anastasia had endured in her final hours. With the body recovered and the crime scene secured, the missing piece in the timeline had finally emerged. But the question of why still hung in the air unanswered. To get that answer, the police would have to return to the only person who might know the truth, Saludin S. By late 2024, winter had settled over the island of Kos. But inside the courtroom, the air was thick, stretched tight, like a wire about to snap. Saludin S. was led in, his eyes dark, his face unreadable. Across from him, Anastasia's family sat close together, hands clenched as if holding themselves from falling apart. The prosecutor laid out the case with a methodical calm, though every detail cut through the room like a blade. They built their argument on 3 pillars. Anastasia's DNA found inside Saludin's home, a sequence of surveillance footage mapping her last movements and his post-crime behavior, removing the SIM card from her phone, purchasing a ticket to Italy, and concealing her body in a plastic bag covered with branches in the Alik's wetlands. They presented a grim timeline. On the night of June 12th, Saludin lured Anastasia with the offer of hashish. From his home, he took her to an isolated area near the wetlands, where he sexually assaulted and strangled her. Afterward, he returned home alone, collected trash bags and a bedsheet, and went back to hide the body. The defense fought back, calling the prosecution's theory a chain of weak inferences. They claimed her visit to his home was voluntary, insisted there was no direct proof he caused her death, and floated the idea of a third party being responsible after she left. They argued that DNA could be explained by brief nonviolent contact, but the evidence spoke louder than speculation. Surveillance showed Anastasia leaving with him around 10:30 p.m. and him returning alone at 1 a.m. Plant material on his clothing matched samples from the wetlands. And his own Google searches on that very night, how to confuse the police and how to remove fingerprints from a body, were damning. Throughout the trial, Saludin rarely looked toward the victim's family. When Anastasia's mother testified recounting her daughter's life and the horror of her loss, she broke down in tears. Some in the courtroom turned their faces away, unable to bear the details from the autopsy report. On December 6, 2024, the judge delivered the verdict: life imprisonment for murder, rape, and abduction. Under Greek law, he could request parole after 18 years, but given the severity of the crimes, that possibility seemed distant at best. For the family, the sentence was not an ending. Adrian told reporters, "We wanted justice, and we got it. But that doesn't bring my sister back." The court had closed the case. The grief, however, would remain open, a wound that time alone could never fully heal. The sun was setting over Marmari Beach, its last light spilling across the empty row of service chairs where Anastasia once stood, tray in hand, greeting guests with a warm smile. Now the chairs sat untouched, the bar silent, as if she had never been there at all. For her family, The life sentence was not a conclusion, but a single line in the long diary of their grief. Every day, since they have lived with the same unanswered question, what exactly happened in those final moments? And that answer, if it exists, is now buried forever with her. Her brother Adrian spoke through tears. He was sentenced. But for us, the pain will still be here every single day. We have to learn to live with that emptiness, because my sister no longer has the chance to. Anastasia's case is a reminder that light and darkness are often separated by nothing more than a wrong turn, a single bad decision, or trusting the wrong person. Safety isn't guaranteed just because you're in a crowded place. Sometimes it takes only one moment of vulnerability for the world to turn on its head. If this story has reached you, share it, so Anastasia's name is not forgotten, so that someone else's vacation, someone else's night out, will end in safety rather than silence. Because sometimes the only thing that keeps the darkness from swallowing the light is the act of telling the story and refusing to stop searching for the truth.